In the 18th century, as Europe, weary of old orders, yearned for something new and unknown, a rumor spread through its salons and royal courts about a certain Count Cagliostro. He was a living legend, a figure woven from myths and whispers, an alchemist, a magician, a healer, capable, by his own assertions, of turning lead into gold and restoring youth. But who was he really? Giuseppe Balsamo was the name given to him at birth in 1743 in Palermo, on the sun-drenched island of Sicily. The son of a poor merchant, orphaned at a young age, he quickly learned the harsh realities of street survival, honing his skills in deception, document forgery, and petty fraud. Expelled from a monastery for his audacious antics, he made a unique choice. Instead of fading into obscurity, he embarked on a grand journey. From Naples to Rome, then to Egypt, Malta, Spain, France, and England, each city became a new stage for him. Every person he met a potential victim, or more often, an enthusiastic devotee. He studied not only ancient texts and occult practices, but crucially, human nature, its weaknesses, and its yearning for miracles. He learned to speak several languages, mix herbs, simulate alchemical reactions, and most importantly, persuade. Thus, Giuseppe Balsamo transformed into the mysterious, charismatic, all-powerful Count Cagliostro, a self-proclaimed Grand Copht, and the founder of his own esoteric order of Egyptian Freemasonry. His reputation grew like a snowball. He foretold the future, healed the incurable, demonstrated metal transmutations, and revealed secret knowledge. Kings and cardinals, aristocrats and intellectuals, all craved his attention, his elixirs, his advice. Paris, Strasbourg, Saint Petersburg, London, everywhere he was met with enthusiasm and adoration, seen not merely as a man, but as an emissary from other worlds, a bearer of ancient wisdom. However, every star eventually falls. The culmination of his European tour, and simultaneously the beginning of his end, was the infamous affair of the diamond necklace in France, one of the most sensational scandals of pre-revolutionary Paris. Accused of fraud and conspiracy against Queen Marie Antoinette, Cagliostro was arrested, brought to trial, and despite being acquitted in this particular case, was soon apprehended again. This time it was in Rome, by the Inquisition, on charges of heresy and Freemasonry. His brilliant career concluded with a life sentence in Castel Sant'Angelo, where he died in 1795. Count Cagliostro was not merely a charlatan whose life amounted to a series of clever swindles. He was a brilliant psychologist and a masterful showman, whose success was only possible because he perfectly mirrored the aspirations and anxieties of his time. He sold hope, healing, and secret knowledge to an era desperately in need of them, creating an illusion that proved more potent than any reality. His story is not just a chronicle of deceit, but a profound insight into the nature of belief, despair, and the human readiness to believe in miracles, even when those miracles are woven from the purest mystification. The mystification in which he excelled did not emerge from nowhere. It was forged in the crucible of Sicilian streets, where young Giuseppe Balsamo, deprived of parental care at an early age, learned to survive. 18th-century Palermo was not merely a city, but a boiling cauldron of poverty, superstition, and boundless opportunities for those who dared to live outside the law. Here, there was no clear line between truth and fiction, between a miracle and a clever trick. Every day was a lesson, and every person encountered was a potential victim or a teacher. He observed street healers selling potions for all ailments, wandering seers predicting fates for a copper coin, and cunning merchants skillfully peddling their wares. He saw how easily people succumbed to promises of quick wealth, health, or happiness. This was not just poverty driving people to crime. It was fertile ground for the development of a natural talent for manipulation, for creating illusions that people desperately yearned to accept as reality. He quickly understood that the most valuable currency in this world was not gold, but hope, and he learned how to sell it. Orphaned early and left to his own devices, Balsamo did not have the luxury of choosing his path. He had to learn the cruel rules of the game. Lies became currency, deceit a shield, and the faith of others in something greater than themselves, a tool. He didn't just forge documents or commit petty thefts. He honed the art of manipulation, reading people like open books. Every successful scam, every unpunished fraud, reinforced his belief. This world belongs to those who know how to deceive it, and people crave to be deceived if the deception promises them what they desire. The monastery, where he was sent, was supposed to be a salvation, but turned out to be just another stage of learning. His audacious antics, ridiculing dogmas, and constant attempts to outsmart the system ultimately led to his expulsion. This expulsion was not a punishment for him, but rather an initiation, definitively cutting off the path to an ordinary life. The moment the monastery doors closed behind him, Giuseppe Balsamo, consciously or not, burned his bridges. He understood. His future lay not in following rules, but in creating them. He chose a path where his only law would be his own will, and his only capital, his boundless inventiveness. This was not just a departure from Palermo. It was a metaphorical break with everything that traditional society dictated to him. From then on, Giuseppe Balsamo could become anyone, and he chose to become someone who would surpass all expectations, who would create himself against all conventions. It was this decision, made on the threshold of adulthood, that became the point of no return, after which the road to a normal existence was forever closed. He no longer sought a place in the world. He intended to create his own world. The 18th century, beyond the personal journey of one man, was a continent balancing on the edge of an abyss. Europe, outwardly gleaming with Rococo splendor and Enlightenment ideals, concealed deep cracks beneath its ornate facade. Absolute monarchies, seemingly unshakable, were in fact riddled with corruption and inefficiency. Royal courts were drowning in debt, depleted by endless wars and grandiose projects, while the aristocracy lived in unimaginable luxury, completely detached from the realities of their subjects' lives. This created a monstrous imbalance, breeding widespread discontent and a hidden, yet powerful, yearning for change. Economic oppression was pervasive. The majority of the population lived in poverty, suffering under the heavy burden of taxes and feudal obligations. Harvests could be meager, bread prices exorbitant, and any natural disaster or political crisis turned into a personal catastrophe for millions. At the same time, the emerging bourgeois class, possessing capital but deprived of political power, felt disenfranchised, striving for a new order that would reflect their growing influence. In such an atmosphere, not only economic but also spiritual needs remained unmet. Faith in God, once an unshakable pillar, was questioned by Enlightenment rationalists. However, instead of completely rejecting the irrational, many turned to new forms of mysticism. Secret societies such as Masonic lodges flourished, offering their members a sense of chosenness, access to ancient knowledge, and brotherhood that transcended social barriers. In aristocratic salons, where the ideas of Voltaire and Rousseau were discussed, conversations about alchemy, astrology, and spiritualism were held with no less enthusiasm. People yearned not just for explanations of the world, but for its transformation, seeking a personal miracle capable of breaking the vicious cycle of hopelessness. This was a time when scientific discoveries coexisted with deep superstition, and the boundaries between empirical knowledge and occult practices were strikingly blurred. Even the leading minds of the era tried to reconcile rational thought with belief in invisible forces, in universal laws that could only be comprehended by the chosen few. People sought answers to fundamental questions about life, death, wealth, and health outside traditional institutions, the church and the state, which seemed no longer able to offer either hope or solutions. They were open to anyone who could promise something more than gray daily life, who could lift the veil of mystery, heal illnesses, or point the way to prosperity. It was this widespread dissatisfaction, this mixture of despair and fervent curiosity, this readiness to believe in the exceptional, even if it bordered on the incredible, that made the 18th century an ideal stage for those who dared to sell dreams. Onto this stage, ready for a grand performance, stepped Giuseppe Balsamo, already honing his skills. His first major enterprise, which occurred back in Palermo, showed the true scale of his ambitions. He convinced a wealthy jeweler that he possessed an ancient map pointing to hidden treasures. Under the cloak of night, On a mountaintop, amidst howling winds and mysterious incantations, Balsamo staged a ritual that supposedly would open the way to the treasure. He scattered a few old coins to enhance the illusion, then, claiming interference from evil spirits, convinced the jeweler that a large sum of money would be required to appease the forces. The jeweler, blinded by the lust for immense riches, handed him a significant sum, after which Balsamo, of course, vanished, leaving behind only dashed hopes and anger. This audacious deception, which cost him expulsion from his hometown, became his first university, where he earned a diploma in the psychology of human greed and naivete. After a series of petty scams and brief imprisonments, Balsamo realized, to truly become great, he needed not just deception, but an entire mythology that thousands would believe in. He began his transformation, carefully crafting an image that could satisfy the era's insatiable thirst for the occult and mysterious. It was then, during his travels through Egypt and Malta, that he presumably drew ideas for his most grandiose project, Egyptian Freemasonry. He didn't just join existing lodges, he declared himself the Grand Copht, a direct descendant of ancient Egyptian priests, a guardian of forgotten knowledge, capable of initiating the chosen into the mysteries of existence. This was not just a Masonic lodge, but a meticulously planned role-playing game, where every ritual, every detail of attire, every word was designed to immerse the adepts in a world of mystical revelation. Joining this order cost enormous sums of money, but promised something priceless: immortality of the soul, rejuvenation of the body, attainment of wisdom, and even the ability to transmute metals. He didn't just promise, he demonstrated. In his hands, lead seemed to turn into silver and then into gold, albeit in small quantities. These miracles were the result of clever chemical tricks and pre-prepared substitutions, but to the uninitiated public, they were irrefutable proof of his supernatural abilities. Simultaneously, Cagliostro actively sold his elixirs of youth and panaceas, herbal tinctures which, he claimed, could cure any disease and restore lost vigor. The price for a bottle of these miraculous concoctions could reach astronomical sums, but demand was immense. People, desperate to find healing from traditional doctors, were willing to give their last for a fleeting hope. He didn't just heal bodies, he healed souls, granting them the illusion of control over fate and time. His success lay in not just selling products, he sold an experience, a ritual, belonging to the chosen, and most importantly, a living, tangible dream of the impossible, which made people believe in his divine origin. Each such demonstration or sale didn't just bring him income, it strengthened his myth, making his name synonymous with wonder and mystery. Cagliostro's true magic lay not in alchemy or ancient spells, but in his masterful command of the most complex of arts, the art of manipulating human consciousness. He was not just a charlatan, but a brilliant psychologist whose charisma acted like a spell, paralyzing critical thinking. His voice, low and enveloping, his command of several languages, and his ability to speak about the most complex matters with convincing simplicity, instantly created an aura of exclusivity around him. He looked into the eyes of his interlocutor, precisely scanning their hidden desires, fears, and most importantly, weaknesses. Playing on greed and despair was his main tool. He didn't just sell elixirs or promise gold. He sold hope for salvation from illness, for eternal youth, for untold riches. To aristocrats bored and indebted, he offered mysterious rituals promising access to ancient knowledge and power over destinies. To common people, crushed by poverty, he was the last resort, promising healing or a chance at a better life. He skillfully created scarcity, making his miracles and elixirs accessible only to the chosen, which only enhanced their value in the eyes of the eager public. Cagliostro didn't need external experts. He was the expert himself, the self-proclaimed Grand Copht, whose words required no proof, only faith. His strategy was not to seek confirmation, but to create a sensation. In each new city, he started small, spreading rumors of his incredible abilities through carefully chosen agents or already enchanted adepts. He held private sessions for the most influential figures, knowing that their enthusiastic reviews would be the best advertising. Thus, by word of mouth, From salon to salon, his reputation grew like a snowball, preceding his arrival and preparing the ground for a triumphant appearance. He might arrive in a carriage drawn by 6 horses, surrounded by an exotic retinue, dressed in luxurious garments, displaying wealth and power that seemed to be the result of his own magical abilities. His incredible adaptability was key to his survival. Expulsion from the monastery, a series of petty scams, and imprisonments taught him to react instantly to any change in situation. He could instantaneously change the legends of his origin, adapt his rituals to the expectations of a specific audience, or simply disappear when danger became too real. He was a chameleon who didn't just blend with his surroundings, but repainted them to suit himself, forming a reality in which he was the sole star. His life was a continuous spectacle, where every city, every court, every crowd became a new backdrop, and he was the sole, inimitable actor whose role changed depending on what the audience yearned to see. Cagliostro's spectacle required not only enthusiastic spectators, but also influential actors willing to play by his rules, and most importantly, to pay for every appearance on stage. He quickly realized that the most generous patrons would be found among those who possessed power and wealth, but suffered from boredom, illness, or a severe lack of real influence. Such was Cardinal de Rohan, a brilliant but frivolous French aristocrat, desperately wishing to regain the favor of Queen Marie Antoinette, which he had lost due to his scandalous reputation and the monarch's personal dislike. For Rohan, Cagliostro transformed from merely a healer or alchemist into a conduit to secret knowledge capable of changing destiny. The cardinal, blinded by faith in the count's magical abilities, generously financed him, hoping to gain favor at court through him. But into this game of shadows stepped another player whose cunning and unscrupulousness surpassed even Cagliostro himself, Jeanne de Valois Saint-Remy, Comtesse de la Motte. She was the heir to an ancient but impoverished Valois lineage, obsessed with restoring her former grandeur and gaining access to the royal court. Jeanne, a keen connoisseur of human weaknesses, immediately recognized Cagliostro as a tool to achieve her goals. She saw how easily Cardinal de Rohan fell for promises and decided to exploit it. Comtesse de la Motte, possessing remarkable acting talent and a complete lack of moral principles, began to weave a complex intrigue. She convinced the cardinal that she was in a confidential relationship with Queen Marie Antoinette, and that the queen allegedly wished to acquire an astronomically expensive diamond necklace, but did not want to do so openly. Jeanne cleverly used Cagliostro, presenting him to the cardinal as a man capable of predicting the queen's thoughts and influencing her decisions. She arranged fake meetings, forged letters, creating in Rohan the complete illusion that he was conducting secret correspondence with the queen herself. The cardinal's greed and vanity blinded him. He was willing to do anything to regain influence and prove his loyalty to the monarchy. In this complex web of deceit, Cagliostro found himself not just an accomplice, but a key element in someone else's far more dangerous game. He continued to give his predictions and perform rituals, thereby confirming the truth of Jeanne's words in the cardinal's eyes. This threefold dynamic, Cagliostro's ambitions, Rohan's vanity, and de la Motte's unscrupulousness, created a volatile mixture that was bound to explode. Each of them sought their own gain, using the other as a means. Cagliostro sold hope and mysticism, Rohan bought the illusion of favor, and de la Motte masterfully orchestrated this symphony of lies. It was this network of interdependencies, based on deceit and self-deception, that led to the climax that forever changed the fate of all three and became one of the most sensational scandals of the 18th century. The monumental deception reached its climax not with a grand exposé, but with a simple, devastating question. When Jeanne de la Motte, having convinced Cardinal de Rohan that Marie Antoinette wished to acquire a necklace worth 1.6 million livres, a sum equivalent to the annual budget of a small European country, finally obtained it, the jewelers, failing to receive payment, appealed directly to the Queen. Her response was icy and unequivocal. She had never ordered such an adornment. Overnight, the entire complex web of lies, masterfully spun by de la Motte, collapsed. On August 18, 1785, right in Versailles, Cardinal de Rohan was arrested. Soon after, other participants in the affair followed, including Jean de la Motte and, of course, Count Cagliostro. The Parlement of Paris, France's highest judicial body, launched a public investigation that instantly became a national spectacle. This was not just a case of fraud. It was a trial of aristocratic morality, of court corruption, and, in essence, of the Queen herself, whose name found itself at the center of a sordid intrigue. Cagliostro, accustomed to admiration and adoration, found himself in the unaccustomed role of the accused. His charisma, once capable of captivating crowds and kings, was now directed at defending his reputation and freedom. In court, he behaved audaciously and confidently, denying his involvement in the necklace theft and insisting that he had only tried to help the cardinal through his mystical practices, unaware of de la Motte's true intentions. He even wrote an open letter addressed to the French people, in which he portrayed himself as a victim of conspiracy and injustice, a martyr persecuted for his knowledge and abilities. His eloquence and ability to persuade did not abandon him even in the dock. On June 22, 1786, the Parliament delivered its verdict. Cardinal de Rohan was acquitted, while Jean de la Motte was sentenced to public flogging, branding, and life imprisonment. Count Cagliostro was also acquitted of involvement in the necklace affair, but he was ordered to leave France immediately. This was a Pyrrhic victory. Although he avoided a French prison, his name was forever stained. The public exposure of the affair's details, even with his acquittal, destroyed the aura of mystery and omnipotence he had so carefully built over the years. He was no longer the Grand Copht, capable of performing miracles. He was merely a man, though acquitted, entangled in a grand, fraudulent scheme. His triumphant procession across Europe ceased. Doors that had once opened to him with honor now closed. Public opinion, which had once revered him, now scoffed. He fled France, but wherever he went, the trail of scandal followed him. In London, he attempted to salvage his reputation by publishing pamphlets exposing his enemies, but it was too late. His magic had evaporated, giving way to bitter reality. The acquittal in France was merely a brief reprieve before the inevitable end. He lost not only the trust of the European elite, but also the very foundation of his power, belief in his supernatural abilities. The world he had so skillfully deceived had finally seen through him. While Count Cagliostro hastily left France, the consequences of his involvement in the necklace affair were just beginning to unfold for others. The astronomically expensive diamond necklace itself, stolen by Jean de la Motte, was immediately dismantled by her husband and accomplices in London, and the precious stones sold across Europe. Thus, the necklace, which had been at the center of the grand deception, vanished without a trace, transformed into scattered assets that the fraudsters attempted to dispose of. For the jewelers Baymer and Bassange, who had crafted the necklace, this affair resulted in complete ruin. They did not receive the promised payment of 1.6 million livres, and the crown, whose name had been used in the fraudulent scheme, categorically refused to acknowledge the debt. This led to their financial collapse and exacerbated public discontent, as the story of the jewelers, allegedly deceived by the royal court, was widely discussed. Queen Marie Antoinette herself, though acquitted by the court in the necklace affair, emerged from this incident with an irreparably tarnished reputation. The public, already disliking her for her extravagance and foreign origin, now viewed her either as a naive victim of intrigues, or worse, a silent accomplice. This event became a powerful catalyst for the rise of anti-monarchical sentiment, undermining the already fragile trust in royal authority and bringing the country closer to a revolutionary explosion. The French monarchy, already weakened by financial problems and political inefficiency, suffered a fatal blow to its authority, which it was never able to recover. Meanwhile, Cagliostro, deprived of French protection and public support, wandered across Europe, trying to regain influence. From London he traveled to Switzerland, then to Italy, where his fame, once working for him, now became a curse. Every attempt to revive his order or once again offer his miracles met with a wall of suspicion and hostility. The world he had once charmed now saw him only as a clever trickster. In 1789, seeking to reclaim his lost glory, he arrived in Rome, the city that would be his final stage. Here, in the very heart of the Catholic world, Cagliostro could not remain unnoticed. His Egyptian Freemasonry, with its mystical rituals and claims to ancient knowledge, was a direct challenge to the dogmas of the Holy Church. On December 10, 1789, by order of the Holy Inquisition, Count Cagliostro was arrested. He was accused of heresy, founding a secret society, Freemasonry, and sorcery. The trial was secret, lengthy, and accompanied by a thorough examination of all his books, letters, and testimonies of his miracles. The Inquisition delivered a harsh verdict, death penalty. However, Pope Pius VI commuted it to life imprisonment. His books were burned, and he, as an egregious heretic, was imprisoned in Castel Sant'Angelo, then transferred to the impregnable fortress of San Leo. There, in solitary confinement, far from crowds and applause, the journey of Giuseppe Balsamo, the self-proclaimed Count Cagliostro, ended. He spent his last years in complete isolation, deprived of the ability to weave intrigues or create new miracles. In 1795, at the age of 52, he died in captivity, leaving behind only legends and a scandalous history that continued to stir the minds of Europeans. His death was not just the end of an adventurer's life, but a symbolic conclusion to an era when belief in miracles and secret knowledge could elevate a man to unprecedented heights before casting him into the abyss of oblivion. Giuseppe Balsamo's death in a solitary cell did not signify the end of Count Cagliostro. On the contrary, it was then that his true, elusive essence began to live a life of its own, detaching from earthly facts and transforming into something far more powerful, a myth. The paradox of his legacy lies in the fact that the figure of the Grand Copht, the alchemist and healer, which he so masterfully constructed, proved far more robust and enduring than the real man hidden behind it. The truth about the swindler and adventurer dissolved into the mists of legend, giving way to the image of a mysterious magician, a victim of the Inquisition, and a harbinger of a new era. His story became fertile ground for countless interpretations. For some, Cagliostro remained a symbol of deceit, a warning against gullibility and the dangers of blind faith. For others, however, especially in circles close to occultism and secret societies, he became a martyr whose knowledge was too great for his time, and his Masonic order, a genuine source of ancient wisdom, unjustly suppressed by the forces of reaction. Literature and theater embraced this image, endowing him with traits ranging from a romantic villain to an enlightened sage, or a harbinger of revolutionary change. He appeared on the pages of novels and on theatrical stages. Streets were named after him, and his methods were studied as examples of ingenious manipulation. The lesson his life imparts to humanity is universal and timeless. Cagliostro showed how deep the human craving for miracles, the need for meaning and hope, runs, especially when traditional institutions cannot satisfy them. He demonstrated that belief in the incredible often proves stronger than any rational argument, and that a carefully crafted illusion can be accepted as absolute reality. His success was not merely the result of personal charisma, but also a mirror of an era, reflecting its deep contradictions, between enlightened reason and ancient superstitions, between scientific progress and mystical yearning. Cagliostro didn't just deceive. He gave people exactly what they desperately sought: control over destiny, healing from the incurable, secret knowledge that elevated them above the mundane. He sold not elixirs, but the promise of transformation, and that promise, even unfulfilled, possessed colossal power. This is the main paradox of his legacy. An adventurer who built his life on lies became a symbol of a higher, albeit illusory, truth for millions. His death freed him from the shackles of the physical world, allowing his myth to soar above facts, taking a firm place in the collective consciousness as the embodiment of humanity's eternal quest for magic, mystery, and perhaps self-deception in the name of hope.